and if you listen to the congressional, you know, people who are testifying in front of Congress, so we're part of the team that's helping make things smoother.
Yikes.
So
No, I commend you.
Yeah, ERM is not fun. And it's expensive. It's not fun.
yeah, so
Hey, Austin. Good to see you.
Hey, sorry I'm running a
How's
little
it
late.
going? Oh, that's okay. Rashid just reminded me that, like, oh, he probably just got home from his workout. I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot. I forgot. All
Do I have
right.
like a buzzing noise, or is that just me?
Yeah, we think it's Robert's computer. If you have an idea as to why his computer makes that noise, I think he would appreciate it.
Let me.
Oh,
I am the same way, Austin. I hate little thingies. Let me mute it and then try that. Tell me if it works.
yeah.
Yeah, it goes away. So I'm wondering if it's.
So I have an idea why. So you have whatever you're using for your audio cable or what have you, it's not well insulated. And so you have a power cable very close to your audio cable. And so it's electromagnetic radiation that's interfering with your audio cable.
Or in the move your laptop microphone just got wiggled around. Because you're not using anything for your any other thing for your like your mic. You don't have anything plugged in for a microphone or sound, right?
Well, yeah. Then how old is your computer?
It's gonna be like Methuselah because I'm not buying anything new. But
Okay, it went away right now.
For now, it was going in and out in waves. I think not last week, the week before.
no, I'm kidding. Let me.
So
How old is it, you said? I was just wondering from a warranty perspective to have them fix it.
Well, is this the first time, or is it always showing up like that?
no, it was like not last week, but the week before it was.
Could be a low bandwidth because here where I moved to,
No,
you get what you get. You don't get the high 200.
it's not a bandwidth issue.
Yeah, which it's fine right now.
But I don't think it's a bandwidth issue. So that's the kind of sound that it has to do with electromagnetic radiation, so interference. So it's picking up.
It could be the other computer. Then let me get this other computer out of the way.
Yeah, you're bugged. It's the CIA.
Oh, look, I've been investigated by the FBI. I always like to say at least 4 times for different jobs now. Okay, but
Yeah, I have an FBI file.
Don't talk to me. My name is Abdul Rashid Abdullah. Don't talk to me about FBI investigations.
No, I got fingerprinted because I was trying to do some work with the IRS to get fingerprinted, and then
I can't tell you how many times I've been stopped after getting off of planes. I came back from Japan one time, and I actually had TDY orders. I was detained for about 6 hours in the airport, and I was
right, because oh gosh.
And so I can't tell you why or how, but there was some guy who was connected to something who has literally my exact same name, and I figured it out one time. I'm like, that's why I keep on getting hassled. But I think eventually they figured to get my, they figured, once they started getting better at getting the people's names, like this is not really that guy. Then and then I went through the DH, the redress system and things like that. They redress, and then things got fixed. But for a while there, I was every time I went through. And I remember one time getting randomly checked when my kids were still small, and when they used to check the shoes. Bless you.
Thanks.
My sons were with me, and they told me to take off my shoes, and my kids were of course, they follow everything your dad does, and so the kids took off their shoes, and they said, "Oh, they don't have to do that." I said, "If you're going to force me to take off my shoes, you're going to check their feet too."
Yeah.
So and they felt embarrassed, and I was like, "Well, how do you think I feel?"
Yeah, getting the constant
Yeah. So
profiling.
yep.
Mine, mine was the opposite. My college roommate's boyfriend counterfeited dollar bills from his college dorm room, and they thought that she was holding inventory for him. So the FBI came and searched our room. That was in addition to being fingerprinted for the IRS. So I digress.
I'm the same way. I always get the express route with a background check. It's like bam. Even though Cavalier ain't that, I would say it's that common, but I just
Yeah.
bam.
Well, there is another Erica Harney. She just spells her name differently. She's an artist in Philly.
Oh, that's good. That'd be hard if she was a criminal and he's like, no, I'm the one that's.
Yeah, no, she actually got email of mine like several years ago, and she found me and she's like, I think this is for you. And I was like, yeah, it is. Who are you? Um, and now I have art of hers in my house and a whole bunch of other stuff, and we chat every so often. It's kind of funny. We look nothing alike. She's
So
of Czech
bizarre.
descent. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
bizarre. Her father was given the last name Harney when he came to Ellis Island. Yeah, crazy, right? All right. Well, speaking of, I don't know, I have no link to Greenleaf on that one. I have nothing or leadership on that one. So some folks this afternoon, wow.
This morning.
Yeah, thank you. This morning we went through some questions on the intolerance for ambiguity. Let me pull up this real quick. I'm going to copy some information into the chat that I've already put on Moodle. And so it has the better explanations for what these different scores are for the intolerance for ambiguity scale. Some folks were asking how this was scored and how you like flip the scores and which ones. So I at least wanted to like walk through how that happens and at least have put the extra explanations in the chat. Just because there were so many questions from this morning, but I want to see if you all have the same questions or are wondering what on earth this means or how this actually works. So I don't want to say something is self-explanatory because I don't want people to not ask questions to think, well, I sure already know this. So on a scale of 1 to 7, you say whether you agree or strongly agree with each of these 10, all right? And so you see the definitions there. Then what you're going to do is all of the even number ones. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You're going to reverse the scores. So on this one, the 1 would become a 7, and the 4 for number 4, the 6 would become a 2, and for number 6, the 1 would become a 7. Number 8, a 2 would become 6, and number 10, the 3 becomes a 5. So I'm going to flip those, and then I'm going to add them up for a total score. The highest score you can get is 70. The higher the score, the more you are able to tolerate ambiguity. You have a high tolerance for ambiguity. The lower the number, the more intolerance you have. So let's say, for example, I only speak English. I took 5 years of Spanish, and yet I remember like 5 words. But if you drop me into, let's say Argentina, or even better yet, something that is completely like non-Germanic / Greek related language to, let's say, well, they speak English in Morocco. Like English is not a thing.
New York.
Yeah, well, New York. I used Chad as an example this morning. I'm like, English is not the first language and it's not the second language.
I
So
tell you what,
let's say
Japan, they don't really don't speak much English in Japan.
Italy, that's for sure.
which is funny because they try to teach a lot of English, but if you drop me straight into Chad, I am not going to really know much of anything, right? So if I have a high tolerance for ambiguity, I'm going to love it. And I'm going to either point to things like I need water, or I'm going to point to signs and at least ask at least try to do something, or find someone that's maybe speaks English if you're lucky, but navigate yourself around, and you're going to be excited by that. If you have a low tolerance for ambiguity, this is going to be like a nightmare. You are going to be, say, completely paralyzed by the situation, not know how to find the minimum basic needs that you have, where to eat, where to find shelter, where to stay, and where to go. So that's two polar opposites of the spectrum per se, but if you look at total tolerance and total acceptance of ambiguity, that's how that total 70 works, right? So essentially, the lowest score you can get is 10. So 10 to 70 is where your score will be. And so if I have something that's halfway in between, then I know, well, some things I'm going to do okay with and some things I'm not. So does that add up for folks, literally and figuratively?
I mean, I don't understand why it has to be reversed. It seems like I have to, like, so I have go two, mine is done.
See, you don't have a tolerance already.
You're like, I don't get it. Why does this have to be switched? They do that. So a lot of indicators and assessments are set up that way so that it's harder to throw.
Don't worry. I'm sorry, Professor. It's some logic, and I'm.
So I'm glad you're saying that, because like earlier my kid was doing magic tricks and I'm like, I don't get it. I totally, like, things are flying over my head today. So as the one mom in the ad says, I'm just really tired. Okay. So you get your score after you flip the ones, not knowing why they're flipped. And then you've got these three other scores. All right. So you've got newness, complexity, and insolubility. So I've put in the chat what those descriptions are. I've also put in Moodle in the week which your lab assignments due, like in the description. It's in there. If you can't find it, let me know. So also on the share screen, what you can see is the highest score you're going to get for newness. So it's the number that number of the different items that you add times 7. So the first one you'll get up to 21. The second one you'll get up to 35, and the third one you'll get up to 16. So you add number 2, number 9, and number 5 together for your newness score. So for this person, let's see, 2 plus 5 is 14, and number 9 was 4, so 18. So on a score of 21, 18 is pretty high. So when we look at newness, I might thrive in unfamiliar situations or unfamiliar information that's given to me. Whereas, let's see, for insolubility, so situations that have no apparent solution, 1 and 3, so 8 out of 16, I would not do very well there, or not as well as I might in other situations. So it might be harder if something is so new to me to where I might not be able to think, I won't be able to think critically to see a solution or find how something could be fixed. Whereas somebody else might do very well in kind of coming up with a solution that's not like obvious, not thinking through the situation that they found themselves in. Does that help work through any ambiguity on the intolerance for ambiguity?
Well, I've already just finished mine. Did I get a 7, or do I just add up? Do I add up the even ones, and it's added up?
No, you don't add up the even ones. You switch the even ones, and then you add all 10 of them together. So,
You switch the score, just like, okay, gotcha.
yeah, and then you add all of them together.
Okay, and the whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. So with the new scores, the whole thing. So when I switch these, I don't do math calculator. Accountants don't do math. I'm not an accountant, but I don't do math. So that score is a 51. So this person would have relatively high tolerance for ambiguity, is what that one would be. Other questions on this one in particular? This one came up for a few people, so I wanted to make sure I answered any questions. All right, clear as mud, yay. And as you're working on them too, feel free to reach out and ask any questions if they're, because surely if you're asking the question, somebody else have probably asked the same or wondering the same. All right, so the reading that was for this week was a relatively old article. It was pretty much the original version of what Robert Greenleaf wrote in the late 60s, early 70s about servant leadership. He later, it's a relatively thin book. Servant Leadership's a very thin book from Greenleaf. So it's not a new concept now. And even when he was working on this article, he was pulling from someone's, well, you can see it right there, Hermann Hesse's Journey to the East, where he goes into this whole thing. And if you read through the article, there are parts of it that are very convoluted and then others that are in such plain English. So it's very interesting to read his writing style. But I highlighted a few things in the article that I thought I would bring up for our discussion. So what really stood out to me as I start going through this, and I hadn't read it in quite some time, so it was interesting for me to go back through and read. Leadership is bestowed upon a man who is by nature a servant. So what I was getting out of that was, if I serve first, I then, if you want to say successful, become a leader. Other people are accepting or are comfortable with me as what I'm doing for them or for other people, and are more likely to uphold me into a leadership role, is essentially how I took it. Now, you all might be looking at that in a different way than I am, but I thought it was very interesting to think of, well, you're not going to necessarily be a leader before you're a servant by giving to others. But even what kind of came up this morning too is, what does that mean to be a servant in the first place? Like, sans the leader part, what does it mean to be a servant?
What does it mean to be a servant leader? Or
No, just servant.
A servant. To help other people at all times.
There you go. I like that one.
It's the first thing that comes to my mind.
I mean, I would say that it is a deferential role. Kind of just defers, serves, functioning. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's someone is, no, you know what, I take it back. It might not be deferential completely. It could be. Because something can serve you, but they can also have control over you. Say like a doctor at an operating place or something,
Mm-hmm. So I can help you, but maybe, and like, 9 times out of 10, that's for good reasons.
If I'm out of order, the police can serve me and serve the public, but I may be apprehended or something, They are serving the greater good, including me as a member of society, even though I might be the one that's making trouble.
Okay. Other takes on what it means to be a servant first?
I think it's the idea of sacrificial, because ultimately, no matter what position you are in, I feel like if you're serving, you're giving up of something, whether it's time or resources, so that way you can still be technically, I guess, ahead of someone or above someone, but you're still being sacrificial in your time or whatever. So
that's what I was thinking, except unless you're a machine, unless you're an operating system, a server, then you're a blind system that serves, and then you're just, okay, I'm watching too much sci-fi, I guess, but then you're just, being like part of them of the spokes in a wheel. It's serving you, but I don't know. But I think your take on it is what I would think that the article is probably conveying. The idea of some kind of give back.
Hmm.
Well, I don't think it has to be a choice either, because it could be machine. Like my truck serves me in getting to work in the morning. So I feel like it doesn't have to necessarily be by choice either. It could
Okay.
just be a machine that's made to serve you. So
But once we add in the leadership part, that's a whole separate
yeah,
piece, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Unless we're talking about cyborgs and then
That's a whole
servant
other
leadership.
class.
Yeah.
well, because we are humans, we choose to serve. A lot of people do not choose to serve. Okay, so let me phrase this, by the way, right? Um, there are people who are forced to be a servant.
Hmm.
Let's push that to the side. That's a different discussion. But when we choose to be a servant or in service of others, that's I think what maybe he's talking about. When we choose to be in service of others, when we choose to give of ourselves, that's what I think what we're talking about, without having to be in a role of providing leadership. So somebody says, "Can you show up to help move boxes from here to there? Because we need X number of volunteers for X number of hours to move X number of boxes from here to there." That's the job, right? Because we like if you've heard of like Rise Against Hunger, that's a group that helps do food packaging, right? So you show up, and if you get enough people to show up, you can package a whole bunch of food in an hour or two, and it's just manpower, right? And that's it. There's really not much leadership involved. It's just pure service.
And I find though that the one person that does that for a year, year and a half, 2 years, 5 years, then they were like, oh, that person shows up like every week. Maybe we should make them a leader of a whole team. Maybe they should run each shift. So I feel like there's an emergent leader more so out of in servant leadership than there is, say, other types of leadership.
I feel respectfully, I was very wrong in that perspective. I used to have the perspective that if you served in a capacity, say down the echelon, that would have been better. And I was part of the It's
There's
not,
nothing.
Oh, you cut out a little. Yeah.
no,
Now you cut out
did I cut out?
Yeah.
a little. Yeah, the fuzzy
Dang,
was
it's,
overwhelming.
well, there was some kind of some flying ship. Anyway, I was saying that really quickly that I feel like that I reevaluated that when I saw that some people are followers by nature, and they are not comfortable in a leadership position. And I used to think that everybody was an emergent leader, but I feel that a leader who has got that as a goal to be a leader and then serves. I think that is very, very.
So some. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to
Austin?
say, I think one of the differences is, I think what he gets to is that it's serving towards a purpose, and not everyone is able to identify that greater purpose. Everyone can show up, like Rashid was saying, like everyone can show up and pack boxes, but they're really just saying yes. They're not necessarily pushing towards something greater. They're just literally moving boxes. They're not having that idea of why are we doing this? We're just, somebody said, yeah, we can do this. So
Unless a is explained to them more,
say that one more time.
or does it?
You
Like
you broke,
it. So
you broke up.
Oh, wonderful. Yay, connection issues today. Well, it's a question too of, do you just explain the task or do you explain the reason for the task? Say we need 100 people to come and move these 500 boxes. Okay. Or we need 500 boxes moved so that 1,000 people don't go hungry. Is that going to make a difference in the box moving effort?
I think so. So I believe in something that I learned in the military called commander's intent. Commander's intent was this idea that if you understood the mission, even if the commander wasn't there, or the mission may need to change, but if you understood the intent, in other words, you understand the vision, then you're still able to fulfill you're still able to carry on and handle the task, regardless if in the absence of leadership. And you have inspiration, regardless of if there's a leader tasking you or overseeing you. Because you know why you're there, you know why you're doing it. So for example, where I work in the VA, there is a lot of that going on because we have this passion that we're doing this for the veterans. So many of us work harder just because we know we have this passion that we're serving the veterans.
But I think to your point, Austin, is if it needs to get done, does that always matter? Is that more so to what you're saying?
No, I would agree with Rashid, but I was going to ask, like, what happens though if the commander's not there? Who's leading at that point? I mean, I know we can get down a rabbit hole, but ultimately, if the vision is causing the work to be done, then who's leading? Is it the vision itself, or is it a person behind it? I guess would be my question.
It depends, right? If the vision is strong enough, the vision can inspire others to rise to the occasion and bring out leadership.
I think that this echoes to me, pardon me, in some ways, and especially with the language prophetic, it evoked to me. Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I put these on. Ooh.
That was great. Great idea. Great inspiration.
But
you show great leadership.
Hello. I want to work for you, Rashid. Listen, I think that it evokes to me some kind of ideas about missionary work, but the old kind of missionary work that perhaps went astray in its approach. And it was kind of like what I talked one time about the paperclip maximizer. It was always, we must convert, and just blindly, and a machine that just, and the mission then, that's what those thoughts that you just shared evoked in my mind, something that's just becoming, what is the servant? Who's the servant and who's being served? Boy, I think now I know less what servant means. I apologize.
But I think Austin brings up a good point, though, that goes like hand in glove with what Rashida said, to say, okay, if everybody knows what's supposed to happen, if a person is no longer physically in charge and we all still got to do something, we all at least know what we're supposed to achieve. Now, where it comes off the rails, to a degree, I want to say it could come off the rails, is somebody saying, well, then I'll just take over then.
Well, I you know what? I just thought about something here here just north of here. I don't remember hearing about the tornadoes that ravaged through Alabama? Hear about that? Well, that was just
10 years ago.
No, the ones just now in the news.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rashid knows, and I don't know if anybody else heard it, but that was just a few weeks ago, right? A month ago. And those came up just about 10, 15 miles from here. But what my point is that when that happened, people came about and they served their community members, and they just came out with anybody asking them to. No leader, no clear leadership of you go pick up this, but it was a community of people, and it was pretty admirable. picking up things from the road, helping taking things from
Mhm.
houses, looking for people. Everybody sort of like collect in a kind of a communion of collective effort without a clear leader. Now the leaders of rescue came on, but I feel like it kind of is almost an inherent thing in certain situations.
Mhm.
Well, that
Yeah, we
was
had
my,
the same thing here in Dayton. Go ahead, Austin.
oh, yeah, I was just going, so that was kind of my question. Is like, is there, if the vision is that clear, then is there a need for a leader always? I guess is my question.
So yeah, there's something, one of my fellow scout leaders who runs our COPE course, he talks about the difference between a leader and leadership. And I brought this up earlier in the course, and when you have the right kind of people and you have the right kind of situation, leadership comes about, and it comes about in groups. And you don't really quite, as to your point, Austin, you don't quite always need a leader when there is leadership, and that's that kind of the situation where when there's a clear vision, like you just asked, is the vision guiding you? Yes, the vision is guiding, and people understand. And that's part of, like, when you have team formation, right? And you get to that phase where you've enabled people, they kind of understand what's going on, they have that clear vision, they know what to do. And you don't really, you got that phase where the leader can just sit back and just, they're on autopilot, they say, right? So a good manager, right, barely has to say anything at a certain point. If the team is well trained, if they know what to do, they kind of understand everything, right? And that's because the vision is there. The commander's intent has been made very clear. The vision is there, and that's because there's leadership, right? If you're very despotic, you said you can't do this, you have to do this, do this. There's no leadership.
Which I think, to Robert's point, though, is sometimes you don't even need that. If the purpose or mission is so basic, to where, like for the tornado example for Alabama, the same tornado issue that we had in Dayton 2 years ago, I want to say, 3 years ago, was a basic, people need clean water, people need shelter, electricity, and food. And whatever I have to do or we have to do to make sure that that happens until some structure is put in place, that's what's going to happen. There wasn't like, now some things might have been pocketed in neighborhoods, but some of that is could we even say that servant leadership exists without a leader per se at some very basic human need level? I see a human need and I try to fix it without someone guiding me, leading me, or telling me that it needs to be fixed.
It's kind
That
of
can go the other way.
a soft relationship between a soft relationship between altruistic goals that are almost innate. You see a child that's crying in the middle of the street, and you don't just go about drinking your coffee and cracking your knuckles. You might just step out and find out what's going on, even though it's not your child. And maybe if you think about it another way, there should be fewer children because it benefits your children and less competition. But we don't think that way. That's absurd, right?
When we talk about ethical and toxic leadership, though, that is going to be a key point right there of people who either use leadership for nefarious purposes or turn the other direction. No, this wasn't one that I really, really super liked. Let's see, kind of like next highlight. It's kind of interesting that, and I don't know if this still holds true, as not being a popular one. More servants should emerge as leaders or should follow only servant leaders. So I don't think anybody would argue with we should have if we're going to have leaders in the world, they should be leaders. Like for them to be more like servant leaders, I would hope. But would we agree, this is probably the unpopular part, is that we should only follow servant leaders? And can you separate out someone who is a charismatic leader, a persuasive leader from a servant leader?
It's an unpopular point of view from my point of view, being from Texas and also here now in the South, where it's very seniorial, it's very hierarchical, and it would be like, these people, you mop my floor. These people, you go ahead and get those cattle. These people, it's very clear direction. And the servant, is not going to be necessarily more adept at leadership. In fact, leaders of a certain kind, and well, no, we can get into inequality, and of course there's part of it, but without that part, looking at from the Romans on or even before, there is a clear echelon where you go, okay, this elite group is trained to give orders, and they're very, very comfortable. Even the most demure lady of certain times, they could just give orders. They know how to give orders. But other folks who might come from the servant class may be incredibly uncomfortable with that role and just cannot, they weren't trained that way. So I don't think a servant necessarily can emerge as a leader, or that would be a strength. I think, and then this could be an unpopular, and I would want someone to challenge me on it. I think someone who either has a goal to be a leader, as I stated before, or has some sort, and this is the controversial, of innate leadership abilities. This is where I don't know if I'm treading shallow waters. Is the one that could benefit from serving, because let's say I'm in a serving position, okay? Just like that show where the boss goes and pretends to be, what's that show? I never watched it, but it's a show that pretends to be just one of the regular guys and he's like their actual CEO or whatever.
Oh, Undercover Boss.
Undercover Boss. So you're putting yourself in a position in which you have a great platform to really see what it is. Like, say, I always thought, dang, if Comcast CEOs, living in their yachts or whatever, saw what it's like to call the company, how would they feel about it? How would they feel about their company? I'm not trying to criticize. I'm just saying, boy, if I was a really good CEO, I'd say, well, don't give me the highway, the expressway to call when I have a problem with my Comcast. I want what everybody else has, so that when I call, I get the same experience. So that's, I think, sorry, I don't mean to, but I feel like that kind of serving with purpose, with an agenda almost, can be very beneficial for a leader.
So Robert, here would be my counter to your thesis.
My hypothesis.
Yeah. Well, no. So what he's saying here is he's trying to say more servants should emerge as leaders, or should follow only servant leaders. What he's trying to, in my opinion,
get it,
is encourage a culture of more servant leadership, because he's not saying that.
Gotcha.
He's not saying
gotcha.
there aren't people who
gotcha.
are leaders or have that leadership capabilities. Yep. Okay. But he's trying to say is, you know what? People who are in service of others and who are capable of rising up and emerge as becoming servant leaders.
Yeah. No, I got it. It's like just said JFK profiles in leadership, civic duty. That's what it's. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
But I guess I would say, though, is that I think there are some times where a servant leader is not necessarily the best person to have in a position. Because I feel like I've been in certain situations where, especially like emergency and stuff like that, you just need somebody to go quick and here's what you do it now. And I think, and again, this is based on I feel like, and I think I agree with you, Erica, that I feel like it was hard to keep up with him because I feel like he jumped around so much.
It's organized chaos.
It seems like it's very stream of thought, and it wigged me out. But I feel like based on what I could get that he was saying is that I don't agree that servant leader is
always the best for the
always
job.
The best, yeah.
Well, here's what I would say, Austin, to offer to that. That was a servant leader is a kind of ethic of a person, but what I think I hear you describing is a style of leadership. So there's a difference. So a servant leader is what motivates someone, but what you were describing is a style of leadership. So some people don't. There are times when you have to say, do this, do this, do that. But there are other times when you use certain styles of leadership to motivate people. So there's like the coaching method, the mentoring method, or the very direct method. So so there are times when like when I'm working with the scouts, I generally, as a scoutmaster, I almost always turn everything into a question, which annoys the heck out of them. If they say something,
Well, what would you do?
yes, well, what would you do? But there's been times like, get away from that fire. And they're like, well, because they were about to burn themselves.
Yeah, I was just
Do you
thinking
think
about.
you should get away from that fire?
What do you think you should
Yeah,
do?
because if I
this
told them,
situation?
do you think you should get away from? If I said it like that, by that time they already would have burnt themselves, and then I would have been dealing with filling out paperwork, a mother or father yelling at me.
Well,
so you know, or
I think Austin's saying
was
something here, and I think
Yeah.
I think apologize. I think I don't know if you want to elaborate, but I think that you're saying style, that makes sense to me. Then we're also talking logistical need. So I'm needing these boxes moved, and we're moving these boxes. Let's go. Come on, people. Boom, 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 boom. Tempo, tempo, tempo. And I have no problem with that kind of leadership because we need to get going double time. Now, when it comes to a complex situation where, hey, let's address water shortages, and like we can't go like, hey, come on, people, let's go get some water. Boom, boom. That logistical approach is simply not up to the problem, the nature of the problem.
Correct.
Well, I guess what I would say is I would not use the word leader then. I would use it more of as like servant ethic or like a servant, because I feel like when I hear leader, and again, this is my context, I'm thinking
I know
the style or what the person does, not an ethic that they have, because I feel like that's totally different terminology.
Yeah, the word leader or leadership
throws it off.
changes
I know.
within context of how you're talking. So what is it? It's a noun, it's a verb, it's adjective.
It's
Sure.
such an abstract, and I think when we first started the class, I thought this is going to be a semester long struggle, or maybe not struggle, but challenge and struggle to understand for me. I didn't mean for everybody else. What the heck is a leader? You know, that's what
It's very complex.
I get very semantic. I get very into this, like, wait a minute. No, what are you saying? First of all, how do we define and I've seen many things now.
I mean, I've had a wood badge course, and then I've staffed 4 wood badge courses. So the difference why I talk this way is I've been through a leadership course in a sense 5 times already. So I've already talked about this so many times. That's why I'm and then I've been on a quote. So this is the reason why my head is already.
Yeah.
Or better yet, when you know that you have a group of 25 students who all have their own leadership roles, their own leadership styles, have so much experience, and you try to teach a leadership course. Yeah. It's like which things out of 500 can I pick that is going to be meaningful for all 20 something, or it's really more like 14 of you, because of such the wide variety of contexts and experiences. So yeah, it is complex, and it's really interesting. We'll spend this whole semester together, and you'll feel like, well, there's still so much that I haven't thought about or understand or have experienced when it comes to leadership. And then there are times where you get a whole degree in it and you're like, what was leadership again? Like, I do that all the time. And I'm like, now, okay, we define it this way, but we understand it this way. And I look at this person as a leader, but this person not as a leader. You can talk yourself into circles all day long about this topic.
I think it's fine. I think it's part of the formative process of even thinking about leading people, because we're talking about a different kind of leadership. And I think that, yes, there could be somebody just sitting like the thinking man, just, oh my God, I can't lead anybody because I'm, so analytical that I've got to find out what leadership really means, and then I'll go back to putting that fire out,
Yeah. Which is interesting because I wanted applicable things for this. Like, I'm hoping that you all get the applicability out of this, because having you all like read, and you certainly can, I can give you a whole list of it, of books that fall into the, and articles and everything else, but have shied away from theory, leadership theory, because it only will get you so far. As opposed to what is applicable. So if we take examples such as Greenleaf, you can take it as a leadership theory, but it's much easier to take as an applied piece. But for this whole 16 weeks, we have left out theory on purpose, because you can get into some of the crazy, weird nuances of what does that really mean. And given that we have as this class now, you all are the exceptions of all three of you are in the United States, Carissa's in the United States, but as a class as a whole, we're on, 6 of 7 continent, well, no, sorry, 5 of 7 continents. And we don't have anybody in Europe, damn it. So you get what I'm saying, where we have so many differences amongst just our contexts, where in many learning environments that's not the case, that this is a difficult topic in general to pick and choose.
I have found, like, a lot of times in my scouting units, I have families who come from the Middle East, and they often find my leadership style weak. I'll be honest with
like
you.
Not authoritarian enough.
Exactly. Because they feel that they want me to tell them exactly what to do.
See, I studied Kendo for quite a bit. I absolutely love Kendo, which is Japanese fencing, about cultural appropriation. But I just allowed myself to delve into their training methods, and I did it for many years. And that the training method there is not to speak so much. In fact, there is no explanation of anything. It's just following protocol, physical protocol. You know how to do this, you know how to do this. And whenever you're in a stance, it's not right, somebody comes and just goes, no. I mean, they don't even say no. They just go in there and just move you like a doll, like a mannequin. I mean, it's leadership, because I felt so grateful to my the people that were training me, because I thought, okay, there is no discussion, there is no ambiguity. Oh boy, maybe I do have I do have a. Let's see what my score for ambiguity was. What's insolubility? Is that ambiguity?
Yeah.
It means you can't dissolve in water.
I got a 3. I don't know, but there is a kind of a beauty to a simple system, even though I think that your approach, the coaching system, it can be, infinitely enriching to a young person later in their life. They could just remember, like, wow, now I know how to think in a hierarchical way in terms of intellectual things and decisions and all those kind of things.
But I mean, even from a cultural perspective, it wasn't what somebody else expected. But when you think there are many different ways to kind of take a leadership perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I guess kind of bugged me about him, I mean, I know we talk about it's more practical, but there is a lot of
kind of like philosophical.
Well, and I feel like he's very, so and I don't know what people's experience with this is, but in theology, especially Christian theology, there's an idea of Gnosticism, especially back in like the 1st century, of how like there was
Gnosticism,
hidden knowledge that only certain people could reach.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of his like knowing the unknowable and stuff like that. And I'm like, I feel like I don't agree with that. Well,
but you know what that is? It's a little bit of leaning toward elitism. If I know something that only I have the decipher code for, that gives me power, and therefore there is a power difference between, oh, I know because I am a Gnostic and I know these, mysticism, but I will translate for you so that you know what I know. There's a little bit of that.
Well, yeah, and that's why, like, I feel like that I feel like there's a paradox here because he talks about being the servant leader, but for me, servant leader is all about humility, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything that I was just so I was just gifted with this knowledge, and I've learned, and now it's my duty to share it with you. Like that's kind of how I see it, and not, oh well, their mind is clearer than yours, and I don't know. It gets a little like icky to me, I guess, is where
No,
I think.
I would completely agree with you. It does
Oh,
get kind of icky. Yeah. So I kind of filter out between some of his stuff of like, well, don't you sound like a snarky jerk?
so,
Um,
so Austin, in where I come from the IT industry, the way I learned IT, especially from the Unix side of the house, I learned Unix from somebody who, if I learned it, I was supposed to teach it too. Like
mhm.
knowledge was not meant to be held on to.
Yep.
So and so the guy I learned from, like the first time I asked him a question, he said, did you read the FAQ? Did you read the man page, which is the manual? So before I could
what?
so before I could ask any question of him, I had to go read the man page. Once I read it, then so that means now I could come to him with a much more intelligent question, a background. Then you know what he did? I remember his wife
He
called
pulled
him.
it back out.
His wife called him. He said, "Oh, I'm busy right now." He hung up the phone, and he had a lot of kids, and he literally devoted time to teach me every single time. As a result of that teaching, I literally doubled my salary in about 6 months' time. And now today I have a really good job because of that guy. And I always, at any time somebody asks me about questions about IT or anything, I never hold back the knowledge I know. I always feel like what I know is just because somebody taught me.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when I hold knowledge, it's incumbent upon me to share it.
Totally
Bingo.
opposite of my father's advice. He always said, if you know something, just keep it to yourself. Sell it to them later. That's what he always said.
Sell it to them later. Woof.
I know, but look, it's not a person I admire a lot, so it's okay. It's like I take the opposite of the
Gotcha.
advice. Oh,
Well,
man.
I think you bring up a very good point, Austin, of when we have knowledge, we should be sharing it. So now you all get to go impart your leadership understanding on your communities and be a servant leader, right? And then
See
others,
y'all
you're
later.
like, no, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed. Thanks.
I think the fact that people recognize the fact that you are sharing knowledge and that you're showing that thought leadership and servant leadership is what makes you somebody that they highly desired and sought after. That's what gives you the value, and that's what makes people want to hire you. People who are selfish actually are not sought
Mhm.
after.
That's really good insight. Thank you for that.
My opinion.
No, I think you're. Sounds good. I mean, it sounds.
Today I'm on a team where we literally spent almost the entire day. Those of us who were in the room talked to people who weren't in the room through this little speaker.
Yeah, you sound better with like that. That's closer.
Oh, okay.
You sound really far away before.
When we were on a conference call, literally all day talking on a Teams call, and we were sharing knowledge, and that's what we did all day to solve a problem or problems. But that's what we did all day long. So, at any rate, it's time to break the fast. That was my
yes.
prayer.
I keep forgetting it's still Ramadan.
Yeah, it just
where are we with the project? And I just kind of
so
I want to feel.
Yeah, thanks, Rashid. So I'll stick around and answer questions too, but you don't have to stick around.
Okay.
We can call it a night, folks.
That was my side.
I'll stay on.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
10 seconds. So where are we with? And I apologize for the